Welcome back to another explicit measures episode. Welcome back. Trying to use the words. My tongue
Welcome
got
to
stuck
the
there.
Explicit Measures podcast. My name is Mike, and this is... Oh, sorry.
Welcome back with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Here we go. Jumping into our topic for today. Actually, just kidding. I got a quick opener here. So you guys will get a kick out of this. So the other day I was driving around with the family in the car, and I had mentioned something in passing like da-da-da-da. Oh, yeah, and I was having some trouble with the website, my website, something along those lines. Like I was fixing something on my website, and my daughter goes, "You have a website?" And I was like, "Yeah, like PowerBI.tips." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have like a lot of websites, like multiple websites." She's like, "You have multiple websites?" I was like, yeah. And I'm just dying in the car. I'm like thinking to myself, how did you not know this? You're like 11. I've been talking about this for and they tease me about Power BI tips. They tease me about the podcast. I think they only think I have a YouTube channel.
Oh my, no way.
So she's like, I didn't even know you had a website. Yeah, that's pretty much the name. Like I said, PowerBI.tips is the website address. You go to the website. She's like, I've never even gone there. Anyways.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I feel like, what is that? A prophet in his own home is never taken seriously or something like that? Or
I mean, to equate yourself to a prophet is kind of lofty.
Well,
but that's it, yeah.
Not really, but I'm just saying, like,
yes,
guy who created the website, his own kids don't understand he made the website. Like, you can do that, Dad? Yes, I did.
Your family can always make you humble.
They did. They humbled me.
Keep you humble.
Right? Exactly right. Who cares how many followers you have on YouTube? Who cares?
You have a website?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever, Dad.
Meanwhile, my son is like, Dad, how many followers do you have yet? Have you hit them? Have you hit 100,000 yet? Are you there yet, Dad? I'm like, dude, you just gotta let it kind of grow. Like, you just can't push it to the end. Like, he's like, you're so close, but you're not there yet. I'm like, I know. I'm checking it every day. Be quiet, please. I don't want you to talk about it anymore. Making me stressed out. Anyways, fun interactions with the kids, and actually them learning that I actually do something other than sit in the basement and talk on the camera all day long. So apparently I do other things than that.
That's hilarious.
Anyways, that's good stuff. So we'll jump in. Topic for today. Tommy, give us our topic for today. What's our main topic here?
Yeah, so I feel like we've done this one in a lot of different lights, but I think I will always continue to hammer on this where when we're looking not just at an individual, right? When we're thinking about where skills are, what people know. Hello?
So why are you laughing?
Did you really just just started this segment? I think we've done this one multiple times.
Oh, it's not a great day, is it?
I'm pretty sure there's not going to be anyone listening.
I'm pretty sure there's a new spin on this one.
Yeah. What's the topic though? Like before you can start giving us the opinion,
what are we talking?
What's the main topic for today, Tommy?
About many times before.
We've talked about skills and the idea of the skills, right?
Okay, skills matrix. Yep. What kind of skills do you need for Power BI? Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
What skills do you need? Yeah, kind of thing. But I think there's a problem, and I think we continue to have this where, especially now with Fabric, where do those skills either expand and how much overlap is there? And then is there a need to actually measure it?
Okay. So I'm with you. So yeah, let's add Fabric into this mix. Okay, fine. I think in general, organizations have no bearing for what skills they have. And I think this topic really came from the amount of interactions I had with companies. And then I listened to them, how they talk about their people, like what they're talking about. So let me give you an example. I'll walk into a conversation and I'll be talking to the company. You're giving me head nods?
No, I said, can I pause, please? Because I don't think we've actually stated what it is we're talking about yet.
Oh, yes.
We're talking about
Seth,
today.
give us the topic for today.
Today, rewind to Tommy's segue. What are we talking about today, Tommy? Today, for the third time, we're talking about measuring organizational BI skills.
There we go.
How do you measure
That's the topic.
Intelligence School within an organization?
Sorry.
Mike, back to you.
I thought I said the topic. Okay, good.
Just didn't want our followers, listeners to be completely confused.
All one of them that are left now.
Pretty sure you are, no matter what,
Yeah.
after this to this.
So let me give an example of where I think there's a disconnect between what organizations think they have versus what they actually have.
Mm.
So an example of this would be you go on a phone call, you say, hey, let's talk about Power BI. Who do you have building things inside your company? And like, oh yeah, we have data models. Okay, what is that? Or we have a data set. Okay. Can you explain to me what you mean by data set? It's in the warehouse. Are we talking about Power BI? Are you just talking about general terms? Or, hey, we'd like you to come do some training for us. Can you help us train some Power BI professionals or some elite Power BI people? Yeah, what do you want to do? We want them to go to the website and build a web report. Like there's different degree. There's no bar.
Yeah.
There's no measurement stick that I can put against this and say that's not the level we're talking about. When you're talking like Power BI professionals, we're thinking like you're doing data modeling, you're building reports, you're building multiple pages, you're doing like bookmarks, fancy things. Like there's different scales or lenses of what this looks like. And I think sometimes when companies talk about their talent, they don't actually know what they're measuring against. And so when they say we need a Power BI developer, what kind? Do you need a report builder? Do you need a data modeler? How do you measure that? What skills do they need to be a level 100, a 300, or 500 in that category? And I don't think companies have a good way of measuring where they're at. So let me just pause there. That's kind of my thought.
Or they just don't. And I want to be cautious here because I tend to agree with you. However, we're not bashing people, right?
No.
Like, the intent here is not to be negative.
Not at all.
But on the flip side of that,
is this your negative comment?
Even when we are interviewing for folks who should be Power BI professionals,
yes,
we still get people coming in that open the tool and say they know Power BI very well. And the reality is like there's a lot of it, right? So in an organization, there as you were describing that, there's buzzwords, Mike. Warehouse, data warehouse is one of them.
A data set.
How do you build one of those again? How Power BI?
Incremental refresh.
What do you know about Power BI?
Yes.
Everything. Really? Yeah. I mean, I can do it all.
And Seth, you and I have been very sneaky in some of these interviews. When we've done some of these together, we've said, hey, please rank yourself. Here's a topic. Let's talk about this is another telling thing that I think I found when doing interviews with people. Hey, do you understand Power Query? Yes, I understand Power Query. Okay. Can you explain at a high level what is it there for? And they usually do a great job. Here's why I'd use it. It's for the business user, all these things.
Yeah.
A couple good bullet points. I'm like, great. Rank yourself and tell me out of a 1 out of 7 being like the expert level and 1 being I've just barely opened the tool. Tell me how you rank. What level are you in that space? And you actually have them score themselves on a scale. Are you extremely competent or are you a basic user? And usually what I find is they overvalue their rating.
Yeah. Just since we seem to segue into interviewing people all the time, which I suppose is a good thing. One of the adjustments I've made that's been really powerful is I used to pick all the topics I wanted to talk about and have them rate themselves across that spectrum. I don't do that anymore.
Oh, interesting.
I take it section by section because after the first 2, for sure, if they start at an 8 or 9, by the third one, you tend to get down to reality. Because what happens and what most people don't know is like when you rate yourself really, really high, you skip all the easy questions. And we go right into the harder ones. Yeah. Because like the point is like if you're interviewing somebody well for a position, I think you should have the same standard questions for every candidate, provided they're in the realm of where that candidate role would be. More advanced questions for higher roles, a little less advanced for less, because you're trying to get an understanding of where they're at. You're not going to dump the super advanced questions at people who are like the junior BI position or something like that.
True.
But if they think very highly of themselves, even after cautions, they quickly realize that they're in the realm that they don't know. And then you start to get a I think
Start
an
correcting their
accurate
numbers.
measurement, because
Yeah.
at the same time, like they're in an interview, somebody's trying to pull forward their best. They want you to think that
Totally
they're the
makes
best,
sense.
et cetera, and you're combating a little bit of that. And I think that offsets it and brings it back into just a real conversation, which is what anybody wants, because we're trying to get to know you, trying to understand your skill sets and where you would plug into a team.
Yep.
You don't have to know everything, right?
Yes.
But I think what's important in this part of the conversation is you're going to have that in interviews. You're going to have that for people that have gotten through interviews, call themselves Power BI professionals. And yet, if they were, they wouldn't be contacting you, Mike, for training.
Right.
Right. So maybe they may use Power BI, right? But I think that's where it is important as you go through this kind of journey of like understanding the BI skills within an organization. Can you measure folks, or at least say, hey, here's a skills matrix. Where do you guys rate yourselves? Right. Like, and then have a follow up or something, right? You can do this in forums or quizzes or whatever the case may be to kind of level people up. But I think it's like, it's worthwhile, especially if you have a lot of BI practitioners, to figure out like which ones are your champions, which ones are better than others, and a measuring stick of some sort, I think, is something that is very useful, as opposed to just taking people's word for it.
I want to pick on your point there. Where does the measuring stick come from? Who defines stick?
Power BI.tips matrix skills matrix. There's actually been, I mean, I wrote a skills matrix.
It's a great article
a long time ago.
Yeah, totally.
And we could paste that in the chat. But there's also been, I think, a revitalization of that conversation. And so, NJ Park, who's
NJ,
put one out recently. Yes. And I think there was another one I've seen where people are enhancing and building with new skill sets. Like, so skills matrices are great, like from a individual perspective.
Yes.
I think on a higher level as well, you could probably use some of the like data literacy comparison things out, the matrices. Data Camp's got one I really like, but that covers a lot more than just people. And it leverages, it kind of dives into infrastructure, also the people, the tools and processes with it, and just what the organization is. Because there's a lot of components to whether or not whether or not business intelligence is going to operate well within your organization. There's a lot of components outside of just individual people skills.
Correct. Thoughts, Tommy? Did we pull you too far off topic here for what you were originally going? You've been quiet.
Because I've been actually really been going through this. So maybe I did think of this question initially. But how much are we measuring on the skills? And I think that's where we always seem to focus. Yet that can be such I don't want to say like a catalyst for something failing, but man, if you just had someone take a standard test, look at this data set, but their ability, especially in organizations where the maturity is low or they're just starting off, it's very hard waters to navigate. And it's not like you're like walking a tightrope and you know the dangers. You just kind of are.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
I like it this way. When I started learning Power BI, what I build now is way different than when I started. And I made a lot more mistakes, right? My Power Query steps had a lot more repeating steps, right? So it was almost like, it's not that I got lucky, but it was more like I'm kind of like walking across a busy highway and I'm just happen to not get hit by any cars as I wander across the highway, right? And occasionally I build a report where, oh no, maybe I get bumped by a car and that report gets run over because now it's a total mess, right? The thing breaks. I have to stop what I'm doing. I've got to go fix. It's an emergency. I've got to go fix something because, again, I wasn't watching where I was walking, right? Now that I'm a bit more seasoned in what I've built with Power BI, I know where the pitfalls are, right? Now I'm looking for like the crosswalks. I'm now looking for like where, waiting for the traffic to stop and then trying to cross it. There's certain steps that I'm doing now as a preemptive or a planning step that I do more in front of my reports so that the output of my reports or the output that I'm building is more consistent and repeatable over time.
Yeah. I think, Tommy, you make a really good point because it's the transition from, in my mind, a large organization with a lot, like probably a higher data literacy, right? Where you have a lot of BI skills and you're trying to figure out like who's my creme de la creme versus like who just says they are. Or, hey, you're walking in and you're going to do a training for 50 people, right? Like who's who, how, right?
Yeah.
Versus, I think where what you bring up is probably more ground floor. You're not going to throw tests or matrices at people who haven't done this stuff before or just dabbling.
Correct.
So what I think I've found that's been probably very useful, and by nature, I think you guys are just doing it, is you start co-coding with people. You co-build reports.
Yes.
And not only are you like working with those
Co-development, right?
business people interaction, right? Most of the time they know something about Power BI. They at least know that there's the Power BI desktop and how to start building something. That's huge on you. Your 5 minutes to wow.
Yep.
But after one session, you pretty much know where people are at. And we talk about that in interviews. Like if you could only do a practical interview, like it says a lot about the skill levels of somebody, etc. And I think one coding session is more than enough to evaluate the skill sets of somebody and kind of stack rank them in what their abilities are or where you would need to get them to be, depending on what you're trying to do with the organization.
I like your approach there, Seth, and I think that's a really good way of kind of like, again, I think we're talking about data culture. So, some other techniques around this is where things I think fit here. Maybe where I'm trying to take on some of the conversation is, one, you need someone on your team or someone you hire or somewhere to assess the skills of the team, right? Because if you don't, so the challenge I think I see is I see managers showing up with a department and say, "Oh, my team knows Power BI. They told me they know Power BI." Well, what do they know? And so we don't really have this baseline consensus saying, well, why are we building one model to one report all over the place? Everyone's doing it. Well, obviously there's a miss. We're not trying to reuse. Is anyone using certified data sets? No. Why are we not using that for your central BI team? These are things that we think we would want to leverage as like best practices. So to me, I'm looking at it going, okay, you need someone to step into that situation and start saying, okay, I know some best practices. Let's apply those. And a great place to start would be look at the Power BI adoption roadmap, because that's a lot of there's a lot of people-based things. There's a lot of process that you may or may not have. And there's a lot of technology pieces that you're not used to incorporating, right? So how do we leverage that inside an organization? So that's a great starting point to measure your team against. And if you haven't even read that, I was talking with someone recently and they were like, wow, we have so many reports in our organization. Tell me about the reports. Well, they're not using Power BI Desktop. What are you talking about? You're using Power BI, but not Power BI Desktop. What's going on? They're like, oh yeah, we've got like hundreds of reports. I'm like, they're describing to me, we're using a program like Power BI Desktop. It's like, no, the other one. The other one? Oh, you're talking about Power BI Paginated Report Builder. You're talking about Power BI Report Builder. They're like, yeah. We're using that. So what had happened was everyone thought they were using Power BI, but we were building a whole bunch of paginated reports. And I was like, let me ask you a question about let me ask you a question about your tech stack. Are most of your BI developers coming from SSRS? Yes. Yes, they are. So the idea, we found Power BI. We were able to someone built a cube, published it, and everyone's like, okay, now we can build and publish and email out our reports directly from Power BI using all, report builder. I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense now.
Yeah.
And so to me, like they were thinking like, oh yeah, that's ground zero. Like we're good. We know what we're doing now, but there's like all these other areas of influence that they're missing, right? So they're not using certified data sets. We're not looking at like workspaces. We're just trying to pump out reports and get them in and email them to people. I'm like, that's not really what I think we're trying to do here. We're really trying to build some more self-service pieces. So there's like more conversations coming around how that's transforming their business now, because now they actually like, whoa, there's a lot more of this world that we didn't understand. We didn't even know that was there. And so now the question is, how do we take our existing people, identify the people that are strong, and start educating them in the Power BI Desktop way, in building reports and building other things that are also adding value to the business? And I think that's where my conversation comes from with this. That's where I think about, right? I got to know where I'm at, and I got to figure out what to do to push me to the next level.
Yeah, man, there's so much in there. I think that speaks to the unbelievable value of this podcast. I mean, ultimately, it's driving at the leaders. Like there are 2 points in here. One is, as you were speaking, I think what's really important is having someone that is managing people or having a technical leader, whether it's the manager or at least in a technical lead role where they have influence over a team, because just straight management in a technical space, you're not going to get that to a lot of what you were describing.
Yep.
The other part is, even if you are a technical lead and you are thinking about strategy and implementation and all of the parts of Power BI, that's what speaks to things like, I think, this podcast or other things related to staying up to date. Staying up to date on what's coming out there, staying up to date on like Fabric and what that all is entailing, because 6 months from now, the conversations are going to be wildly different.
Different.
Right. And I think, so those 2 points resonate with me very large, but it also drives to like a third point where you could be a technical person. You could be kind of keeping up to date, but are you managing your day well and your team? Because that's very difficult to do, especially if you play multiple roles.
Oh,
And you
totally.
guys know this. Like you guys run your CEO, your HR, you're the developer, you're the architect, you play.
Tommy
like
gets a
8 or 9
lot of
roles.
complaints from HR. That's all to
Right.
say that right now. HR is constantly whining at
We've talked about this.
So I think even in recent conversations, where one of, not my pet peeves, but I think one of the challenges is just to manage that in a day, let alone a week.
Yeah.
And I've one of the methods I've done, we talk about the practical parts of people wanting more practical things.
Oh, yeah.
Out of our,
Yeah, what's some
instead
practical?
of
What can you do right now? Yeah.
one of the things I do or have found in terms of managing that is separating out what my responsibilities are. Developers execute, right? That's their job. That we create environments for them, we create work items and all the requirements they'd ever need, and their job is to just knock it out. But that is not your job as a manager, or not your only job. You could have a bunch of things to execute on a day, but you also have to do all the planning, right? You have to plan the next sprint. You have to plan what's coming up. You may have more or bigger role than that, which also dovetails into strategy. Are you always doing planning and strategy? No, but by separating these things out, like execution is my bullet list. It's the things that are coming in all day long, every day, and they get put into like my check. I'm a checklist guy. I'm a checklist like into my checklist.
What? No.
But then there's planning, which is a separate section, and strategy, which is the other. And having those in a place, however you manage yourself, is important to have it in the realm of like it's in the mixer. So you're consistently interjecting some of those longer term things with planning. You're consistently integrating things like strategy. And that's how you kind of maintain, to some degree, I think, the business requirements and needs on you and your team and individual, versus like how you go about implementing Power BI. Do you know everything about it? Right? Power BI, came in, we're gonna use it. Would 15 minutes of searching about Power BI lead you down the road to make you understand that paginated is not the only thing it can do? Just saying, it may or may not, right?
Maybe.
So it's like, it's those things I think that are important to, as you level up in any realm, it becomes like, it should become more ingrained in you, because you're making bigger decisions and you're leading teams and leading people, which I think plays a lot into measuring organizational skills within an organization, because you have more of that influence, or you should have more influence. So maybe the point here is, can you measure organizational BI skills with the leaders running BI?
Your question begs another point that I'm thinking about here is, how can you lead if you don't know where you're going, right? If you're a leader of a Power BI department, you need to be talking with other leaders of other Power BI departments, right? You can go online and read them, or you can learn all this yourself, but you also should be talking with other people who are doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm a developer of Power BI, I'm learning from Daniel Marsh Patrick on how to do better Deneb. I'm learning from Tommy how to do whatever Tommy does whenever he does things in Power BI. I got to learn something from him because he's doing all these crazy, like he's like millions of notebooks. And like, look, I got these PowerShell scripts and I got all these Power Automates going. So I got to look at Tommy and what he's doing and like learn from him. I got to learn from Seth. Like, how are you doing planning and strategy? Like, I feel like I'm always trying to find other people that are in the same realms that I'm dealing with and making sure that I learn from them, because I realize I don't know everything. I can know a lot of things. I can put a lot of pieces together, but I need other people to kind of help along with that. And that goes for a leader of Power BI. It also goes for the developers too, right? That's why I follow all these people on LinkedIn and stuff. I would never be a better report builder if I never saw Miguel Myers blow my socks off with his reports in our user group. I mean, it pushed me to think, like, my little mind did not fathom what this report should look like. Armand van Oosterstud, I don't know, Armand, he's a guy on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Knocks my socks off. He's crazy good with his reports. His reports are, when I look at a report, I'm like, what visuals are they even using to make this happen? I know I'm looking at something good.
For real.
And that's where I'm like, I want more of that. I need to learn what they're doing so that I can figure out I need to learn it, and then I figure out how to apply it. But you're always trying to seek out those people that are better than you. And I think that's important. And if you're building a data culture from a leadership standpoint, you need to bring people to your organization who know more than your people do. Or you need to push your people out into the world and say, go find time to figure this stuff out.
Well, or even provide that, right? Like, what you're saying to me speaks a lot about community, whether that's one that you build within your organization.
Yep.
And that, I think, is one of the best things you can do, which I look forward to doing, is building a culture of having a community of people that learn. You're opening the doors, and you can, bring more people and level them up. But at the same time, like, it's community is such a huge factor in sharing ideas, like you're talking about, Mike, and learning from other people.
Yeah.
To absorb all of the things. And we had this conversation related to a specific area, right? Like where I definitely used to be the person that was like, I can do that. It's not impressive. I can do that. I could figure that out.
Yep.
And eventually you realize, yes, you could, with the amount of time it would take that person who spent 2 years doing it and making all the mistakes and perfecting their craft and doing all that, giving you the shortcut, right? That is why you pay for trainings or skills or whatever.
Exactly right.
And now, like, you can level up quickly because people are going through that very long process and doing trainings. We just give it for free on the podcast. Look, that's why. Anyway, I keep plugging us, which is good, I suppose.
It's funny that you're plugging us on the channel. Like, they're already listening, Seth.
You know why? Because we've talked about this as well. I find immense value in these conversations.
Oh, I do. 100%.
All the time in the chats that are coming through in different perspectives. And I think that's what the value of creating or leveling up skills within an organization related to business intelligence starts with having conversations like that all the time. And the more you can have them, the better off you are. So bringing those into, an organization is even better, but like, it's the community aspect. Are people engaging with it outside of the community is a huge indicator of their current skills and their learning mentality. But it's also, like, I think something leaders can do within an organization to increase the skills.
I mean, what do you think? You've been kind of quiet here. I don't know if we've been not letting you talk enough here, but give us some thoughts from Tommy.
It's late. We're all doing fine. Honestly, the big thing is I've been going through this, and how can you actually measure that? Like, we're saying, oh yes, they need to learn. There still needs to be something that they're going to be, at least to say, is that person good at what they're doing to bring people along, right? Because you may say someone has charisma, but they don't follow through. I don't want to get too outside the scope here, but if we're talking about measuring the organizational BI skills, like, I need to know that I'm going to trust this person to do X, Y, and Z. And I don't think we should measure that. I don't know if we should measure that, because honestly, a lot of organizations don't really even focus on their own team doing that. But there's something to be said in terms of I'm looking for that skill in a very specific way when I'm looking for someone to be the champions. Like there are a few, and I hate to do the old baseball scout where you just know when you see it, but you are looking for that person who's always wanting to learn. Like you want to see that passionate person. Even Microsoft's documentation says that find someone who's passionate. And not saying that's a be all end all, but I thought it was very interesting they used something so subjective in the adoption framework. But it's true. And it's really true in terms of you can't measure passion. I don't think so. But it's important the things that you are looking out for.
I think there are signs of where passion comes. I mean, if you couldn't measure passion, you would not have a Microsoft MVP program. Period. I mean, I think the people who are doing Microsoft MVP are passionate about what they were doing. And I think if you talk to a lot of MVPs, they'd still be a community contributor with or without Microsoft's vote of MVP.
Yeah.
Right? If Microsoft said, Michael, you're talking bananas here, you're done. Like
You're done.
You're done.
You
graduated as an MVP, you're done, you're out. If they told me you're out, I would still be doing the same community things I'd be doing now because I just enjoy it. So, I don't think you see everyday employees. And again, I'm going to speak for me myself because I can't speak for everyone's passion and what they're good, like what they love to do, right? I would work 9 to 5, do the work thing, and then I would spend the evenings and extra time going back into the tool and figuring things out. I built an entire website in nights and weekends around Power BI tips just because I wanted to share with what I was doing. So I took initiative to go above and beyond my daily workflow, knowing that if I spent time learning this stuff, I could be more effective. I could add more value. And there's a message I've heard in companies that is just a very strong, it's like throwing water on the fire, right? When I start hearing people say, I don't have time to learn something new. Yeah. And therefore I just continue to do what I've been doing in Excel or whatever. We're not slowing down to say, is there a better way? And to me, that just goes against every thread in my body of like, I don't have threads, but in every bone in my body, let's try that. Every bone in my body, let's not mix analogies here, but every bone in my body tells me if there's a better way, I want to focus on trying to build the better mousetrap, build the better thing so I could be faster, more efficient. I like doing that. I enjoy efficiency. And so I don't know, that was my statement to what you were saying there, Tommy, but I do want to come back to your comment there, Tommy. Like you mentioned the Power BI champion. I think if you asked a number of people in different businesses at different skill levels, what is a Power BI champion? They would have drastically different definitions of that. So let's do an experiment now. Tommy, how would you define a Power BI champion? What are three characteristics that you would don't even like have to do? What are three characteristics of saying if I saw these three things, you would likely be a Power BI champion?
Okay, never mind. I see. I thought you were going another direction with that. I'm like, okay, but no. I think one would be the immense skill that they have in Power BI. It's well known. They're the person that people go to or have always gone to about data questions or sometimes just even computer questions where they're the go-to person and they're always helping out. Number two, it is that seeing that passion where you get that random Teams message. Like, did you see the new update? Mm-hmm. Or having the conversation like, what can this do? And they're talking to other people about like, oh, do you know there's bookmarks and just kind of spreading the word. And I think three, they're sharp. And they're incredibly sharp and they have had a conversation or that passion's coming from not just their own skill set, but seeing what the impact it can do. So they want to have an active leadership role.
How would you define Power BI champion, Seth?
I'm having a hard time equating what I first heard you say, Tommy, which is like evaluating people on skills and how passion plays such an important role in that. And then we start talking about like the people that you're looking for in an org, and you go almost to the opposite end of the spectrum saying they're the best at it and they're the
So this
sharpest, and passion's part of it. But the other two key things you had in there are like they're already well on their own journey of learning Power BI. And to me, those like are completely disconnected, because passion without the skill set is probably the vast majority of what you have to draw from, as opposed to, especially in smaller medium-sized orgs where you're
Interesting.
So I'm a little disconnected right there. Did I misunderstand you?
No, that's kind of what I said at the end, where honestly, a lot of organizations don't measure soft skills regardless. And I was even saying the things that, as I was saying, like as much as we would want to measure this to see it, like the impact, I don't know if it's possible. And that's why I said sometimes you just know if someone has it. Obviously, you would see the only thing you would focus on was what they were doing in Power BI, but I don't think you can measure the passion. No, absolutely
So
not.
I'm not saying that, right? Like where I get hung up is on the skill sets, because I don't expect technically does a Power BI champion have to be the best as it relates to skill sets? Like are they teaching the business unit? Are they the ones that are out there promoting what's their job? Promote the use of business intelligence in Power BI, or is it to be the technical experts of the organization, or both?
And that is a great point.
It's
But
a
I wouldn't
question. It's a
necessarily
question.
need,
I'm asking
yeah,
for like your definition of the champion.
I would definitely say that to your point, they wouldn't have to be the smartest Power BI developer in the room.
Okay. Because to answer your question, Mike, initially my levels of expectation throughout, I think, younger orgs is not going to rely heavily on the technical expertise. That is what my team is for. What I would be looking for are people that have already shown enthusiasm for Power BI, right? They're trying to use it already, right? They have a learning mentality where I can engage with them and they learn, or a team member can engage with them and they don't make like the big mistakes, or they're solving their own problems, and the ability to execute. If you're going to engage, if we're going to identify you as an individual that is, I think we're going to level you up, right, in an organization, it's that, hey, if you're requesting help and we help you, but we need something from you, are you giving that to me the next day, or is it a week from now, or 2 weeks from now, because you're too busy? And I think that speaks a lot to somebody who wants to learn or really engage in a new technology or a new something, where their enthusiasm is driving a lot of their efforts, which will just continue to build in that Power BI realm, and they'll become stronger and stronger in solving the data problems for their business unit. And my team is there to help engage them further and get them deeper engaged in the tool set so that they become more advanced. And that's where I think skills matrices are a good thing, because they finally get into a realm where, like, okay, well, in your business unit, what are the biggest things you see? Well, why don't you focus here on these, leveling up these skill sets, as opposed to, trying to boil the ocean.
So did you give me 3 things that you were thinking about? Like, so if you had identify a Power BI
Enthusiasm,
champion,
learning mentality, ability to execute.
learning ability, okay. Oh man, I'm digesting all these things. There's a lot to unpack here. Okay, so here's where my head goes on where I think a Power BI champion, or how I would identify them in my company. In the Power BI admin portal, and again, not everyone has this, but you can go in there and there's now a report that's called feature usage that's inside the admin monitoring portal. When you go in there, they have I think it's called the decision tree. It's the decomposition tree. You can build a decomposition tree. And what I've been exploring recently, especially with organizations, is once they have this open, we can go into that report and we can first report, let's just count the number of activities per person, right? Here's your email address. Let's see which user, even just all the activities that are happening in Power, which users have the highest amount of activities. So I think a Power BI champion is one of those users that have a higher amount of activities in PowerBI.com, purely measurable. You can literally say, these are your people. These are the people that are producing the most activities. Now, champions might also have a higher mix of report creation or data engineering or data building activities, as opposed to a user who comes in and just views a lot of reports, right? You may have a user that just comes in and views a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I would also kind of put priority on that as well. And so from my perspective, one of my things would be is engaged with PowerBI.com, right? They're interacting with it a lot, enough so that we see their actions bubble up to the higher part of my company. Those are the kind of people that I think I want to engage with right away and figure out what they're doing and how can I help them. Because if they're doing so much engagement with Power BI.com, they're likely going to be helping other people, or other people know they're doing a lot in Power BI already. So that's a good place to start. Another area here is I think a champion is asking their admins for more control, more features, more workspaces. So, another area or data point you could put on here is which users are hitting up the help desk to ask for things. Where are those coming from? Are you getting Power BI related requests or asks or questions that are coming to some help center? To me, that's another measure of that would be a good champion. And Tommy, to your last point, right? You just know when someone's like a Power BI, you just know, right? I do think there's some quantitative things you could do to make sure that you can confirm that you know. But what I would say is there's nothing so telling as saying, here's a sample data set. It's very simple. It's a star schema. Okay, I'm going to give you the data set. Just show me what you like. Let's to your point, Seth, earlier, let's peer develop, right? I'm going to ask you to build a couple things. Just try and make some things happen, right? If I can just watch you move your mouse around the desktop, I already can know if you're familiar with the application, because if I say make a measure and your cursor fumbles around where to go find to make a measure, and you don't immediately go to the table, right click, make measure, or go to there's many places you can do it, as long as you know where to go to make that thing happen. To me, that tells a lot about like your experience in the tool.
Yeah.
And that would be like, I really look for those in people. And when someone's having problems, I really like them driving, because it really tells me, even when they ask for help, hey, I can't do this thing, I can't make this measure. Okay, great. Show me your screen. And then I start not barking out commands, but say, okay, open the data model. Can't do that. Okay, go find this icon. Go over here, click this thing. Like, if I have to narrate you through, I know you haven't spent enough time in the tool. And to me, that's not a champion. I'm looking for someone who knows how to just kind of jump through the hoops and knows where. And again, it's less pressure if you're just kind of co-developing together.
Yeah, I think there's one caveat to there,
Okay.
which would be, occasionally now, pulling some folks in and saying like, hey, I need you to make this visual and change this property, and then going, I don't know how to do that anymore. Be like, oh, you must be an old school Power BI person.
Well, anymore now.
Right. I don't know where it is. Like, I used to.
How do you make a visual? I don't even know. How do you get a visual page
ribbon
now?
Or
a ribbon, or is it a button, or do I right click? I don't even know.
Properties you have. I don't know.
Yes. I do feel like the new on visual editing is interesting, but it definitely has level set everyone again. We're all back down to ground zero again and figuring out how to build visuals from scratch. We went really basic here, and it pulled me back here a little bit.
I do like your measurement. Like you were very measurement focused in your criteria. You lost me. Like, you just know. Like, wow, there you go. There's the canyon of
yeah. No.
ambiguity. I appreciate that.
Well,
very specific measure. Well,
it's
just no.
Well, and I was trying to throw a bit of a bone here, because I was like, you just know because I've watched you, I've peer developed with you, right? There is you observe what's happened. So that's more of the fuzzy one to me, right? Can you watch, like, have they given you a report that looks good? Have they, when you peer develop with them, are they showing you things that are more complicated? Like, if this person's whipping out bookmarks and switching visuals on bookmarks, okay, I know we've got some more skills here, right? That, to me, that indicates that they're a bit above an average user.
I would, like, you're an advanced user if you're doing that kind of stuff. Like, realistically, like, you don't have. I would say more often than not, you're gonna lose straight business people by dumping in a sample data set. Like, if you can use their data which
Sure.
they know very well,
Yep.
I think they succeed, and they would be able to show you the technical skills that they've learned while building things for their data set.
Oh, I would say,
Or their
look at their Power Query steps. You can tell a lot by how many
There-
how
you
many
can.
steps exist in Power
You
Query.
absolutely can.
Uh-huh.
Did they use Power Query above and beyond just
Oh,
connecting? Right? Are they are they trying to do everything in DAX? Do
everything
they
in that's
have?
another good point too.
Did they
Yeah.
create relationships between the tables that they?
What kind of
have in their-
relationships?
Right.
Are they bidirectional? Are they like many to many? Like what's going on?
Well,
It's
you
also
know
like
that
indicators.
pretty
Yeah.
quickly by looking at their DAX. I have a really complicated DAX thing I figured out from online.
From ChatGPT. Yeah.
like
Okay. Show me
20,
show me it.
20 lines long. Like,
Yes, exactly. Yes. Oh, these are really good
so
points.
you just know that's what
You just those are the things you just know. But that this is my point with this whole conversation is the whole point of this is if you don't know what you're looking for, you have no way to measure them, right? We know these things. We've gotten stuck on these problems. We've done the hard work and like we got stuck. Like we know not to do it that way because we've done 6-7 different problems that way and it didn't work. So like this is where I feel like there needs to be a better solution around, okay, as someone who is not a Power BI expert, how can I get the gauge, right? I feel so if you become like a statistics black belt, right? There's a standard. There is a program that you can go through, and if you are a black belt in statistics, you've taken these kinds of courses, you know these kinds of things, and when you leave, you should be able to answer these kinds of questions. I feel like we need something like that for Power BI because we can't assume every manager of Power BI understands the entirety of Power BI and can accurately gauge the skills of their team. One other thing I'll throw out here too, just one other comment. I might be shifting gears a little bit, right? Let's just say you've been able to gauge your company, and let's say you want to educate more. The next question I think is, what have you guys found as far as what techniques work to start engaging people and getting them to start upskilling to the next level? What does that look like for you? Like, is there any techniques that you've done to kind of help push people over that edge so they either start learning themselves or, you know, the skill of the team starts increasing? Any thoughts around that one?
I really like that question. It's honestly, it's consistency that I've seen is regardless of the practice. Obviously, there's some practice better than others, but it's starting early and staying true to how you're doing training or how you're communicating to people. And eventually kind of people either see the value or they're going to come to you where they know where to go. There's not really like one thing I think you can do for the majority of people where you're just going to wow them away and there's going to be this lightning bolt. I don't think that generally is going to happen to the general larger teams.
But what do you do? Like,
but
what are the actions? Like, hey, we've identified Mike. He's at the company. He's just using PowerBI.com to build a couple report pages, a couple matrices, a couple tables, and then he exports them, right? Okay, we know where he's at. What do you do to engage that user? Like, they want to learn, they want to do more. What do you do? What is the weekly or monthly thing that you do or have done that pushes that person to the next level?
Dude, it is me finding whoever my boss is and letting them know, look how amazing this is. I just connected to this while we're going to spend time. It's just making the time argument. In terms of like, do you know how much time I'm saving right now? But you may not have the luxury of being able to talk to like a vice president or someone in the C-level, but if you're just showcasing to it if you're already doing BI and you're trying to get people on board, stay consistent with asking for requests, make yourself busy, and then keep showing your superiors on what value this is already bringing, how much time is already
Maybe
saved.
I misspoke my question there. I'm not thinking about the relationship of me, the individual, right? I'm thinking about me, the organization, right? Me, the company, right? I'm a lead of a Power BI team, and we have many people on the team, all at different skill levels.
Yeah.
So
or
let me throw
beyond the team, right?
Or more into the business team. Yes.
Right.
Okay. So let me give you one example that I think works pretty well. I think having a leader communicate, hey, we're putting together a program around training and education for people in Power BI, and bringing in experts or looking at what you have and encouraging your experts to communicate on a bi-monthly or monthly cadence where the leaders or the technical leads of your Power BI environment are showing up and saying, hey, did you know this? Hey, did you know this? And I do think because Power BI changes so fast, I think having an intercompany meeting at least once a month, even for 30 minutes to an hour once a month, is really relevant, if nothing else, to go over the new features of PowerBI.com, right?
Yep.
There's going to be new icons showing up. They're adding new features. What are the new things that are coming down the pipe?
New visuals.
New visuals. Like there's new visuals showing up. Like there's actually literally brand new visuals. And how do you use them? Has anyone spent the time to go, did you know you could do this now with these new visuals? So I think there's an investment that I think that needs to be made at the leadership level that actually commits to, we will spend real people's time to educate them. And it may not be a big meeting, but there needs to be some investment from a time standpoint, Tommy, like you were saying, right? We've got to commit some time, a lunch and learn, free food, whatever that is, get people there and then start talking about Power BI with them. And then if you continually add value in those conversations, they come back. That's why Power BI user groups showed up.
Well, and I think like that speaks to building a community in your organization, right?
Yeah.
And you do that around providing valuable information in condensed ways or training opportunities or et cetera, especially if it's during company time.
Right.
But I think there's three things that stand out to me in that question as well. One is, are you as an organization opening up opportunities for people to be creative in solving business problems? Like understanding data and how to manipulate it and merge it and put it together in Power BI to solve business problems is one of the strongest skills of a BI practitioner. And for a business user, learning them is invaluable, right? So,
yes.
But I think a lot of the times they don't know that it's there, or they're not encouraged to go figure out how, like, there's this big problem we have.
Yeah.
You're so close to the weeds. You may have the solution that none of your other people know, or you have a unique approach and you can go do it. The other is like from the leading aspect for people on the team, but especially externally to business units. I think it's really important, to Tommy's point, to be consistent in letting them know that you're there, being an unblocker for them, right? Like one of the most frustrating things, and you guys all know this as well, when you're in learning DAX, oh my God, that can be so frustrating when you're like, you're just stuck and you just need this measure and you've spent an hour or two on it. And you can't figure it out. Unblocking people, walking them through the salute here. This is how this works, yada, yada, whatever. And then they move on. But the caveat there is not being the easy button. I want you to hurt a little bit because it's through that pain that you learn. You don't learn when you just come to me and we're just solving all your problems, and you're not going to skill up if people don't work through those challenges and start to figure things out for themselves. And then, like, I think the most important one, along with like solving the business problems, is as leaders or managers, if people are doing that, promote the solution and provide recognition to those people. The higher up that recognition goes, the more they're going to be innately driven to keep solving those problems for you. There's a carrot stick here. It's not just, hey, I get a lot of satisfaction out of learning these skills. People who are driven or going through the efforts to learn, engage more, provide more value to the business, recognize them. There should be a value string on the other end of that goes above and beyond just like, I'm just going to learn this to learn it, and it's fun. It may be.
That's true.
But a big motivator can be, oh my gosh, like I did this stuff. My manager passed it up, and the director now knows that I have this report, and now I can share it, and we're going to build on it, and then we're going to iterate because it's solving these problems. And there's a lot of value that can come out of this organic work. Otherwise, we wouldn't be pushing a lot of that organic kind of data literacy and all of this within an organization if there wasn't value for the organization that everybody was leveling up and making better and better and better decisions, because that's what we can do.
I really like that. That's really good. Trying to think if there's anything else. So be consistent was a good one. I think I threw in there. I'm just taking notes here so I can use this later in my consulting. So schedule monthly meetings. Write that down. Schedule monthly meetings.
But you have to be the easy button.
I am the easy button more often. Well, it's as I would say this as a consultant. Sometimes you want to be the easy button, but sometimes also you walk into really stupid designs and you're like, this is just junk. You need to throw it away and start over.
It's not
So
it's untrained.
I can come in and I walk in and I can say, here's the easy button, do this. It solves your immediate problem, but we haven't fixed the issue, which is you're pulling 1,000 Excel files in from random places, and Excel users can edit however they want in the file. So there's no consistency in the data. Like, it doesn't happen. So to me, that's the struggle that I find here is I struggle to find sometimes, yes, I can be the easy button. Yes, as a consultant, you're paid for time and your time. But on the other hand, I want to just be a consultant. I just want to show up and give recommendations and walk away. I don't want to have tasks and action items at the end of the stuff sometimes. I just want to show up and be like, hey, this is what you should do. Fix it like this. See ya.
Don't you have people for that? Don't you do that anyway?
That's true. I can actually pawn that off
Hey
to my
guys,
engineers.
I solved all these problems and now you go do it.
Yes, exactly. I like it when I go into a meeting and the client has more homework than I do at the end of the meeting. That's when it really works out well. So anyways, awesome. Well, we've talked through a really good topic. I think aside from our bumpy start, I think we did a good job kind of aligning on, how can organizations measure their talent or their skills? And kind of towards the end here, we talked a little bit more around practical things you can do. How do you be consistent? How do you identify your champions? How you can invest back into your people to help them educate and learn and give them recognition for things that they're doing. So I thought those were really good topics. With that, we would like to say thank you very much for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate your time. This was another good episode. If you like the content you heard here and you want to share it with somebody else, if you're not embarrassed to share it with anybody else, we'd really appreciate it. Please share it on your social media, talk to someone else at work. See if anyone else listens to the podcast. Actually, ask around. Hey, have you heard this Explicit Measures podcast? I'm learning so many great things on there. You should spend a little extra time
leveled up
using the podcast. So that being said, I do want to say thank you all very much, and we really appreciate it. If you like this video, please give it some comments down below. Let us know what you're thinking about this topic. It really helps the interaction and engagement with the platform. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Well, you can find it anywhere that's available. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Really helps us out a ton, especially if you subscribe to our audio. Have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to Power BI Tips /the podcast /podcast and leave your name and a great question. Join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation with the rest of the community on all Power BI Tips social media channels.
I mean, you don't have to ask a great question. I mean, we'll take some mediocre ones.
Well,
if it's a dumb question, we're definitely not answering it. If it's a dumb question, it's out the door. We won't even. Just kidding. We'll at least read them. At least Tommy will. I don't know how many questions I read all the time, but we'll read all the questions.
I added that because of you last time because I said make sure to leave a question. I said leave your name because we were going to say
we want to know who you are.
And you're like, oh, don't forget their question. I'm like,
just we get a whole bunch of comments. They're just Rob, Bob,
Tommy.
Thanks, guys.
TP.
Anyways, thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.